Hello there and welcome to section 9 of Thinking in Fusion, the video manual for ClickTeam Fusion 2.5. We're nearly at the end of the manual section where we explain how all the parts work. The next couple of sections will be tutorials looking at how to make a game from scratch in Fusion and also how to teach that. This section's titled Platform, Publishing and Packaging. When doing games design, a platform is the device it's going to be played on. One of the fantastic things about ClickTeam Fusion is you can build your game to run on web, on PC, on mobile, and with some support on console too. Publishing is going to cover the technical aspects of how you get your game from just being a Fusion MFA file into the right format and then placed in the right location that it can be downloaded and played. And packaging, we'll be looking at how you can make sure all the files that you use in your game travel across with it as it's published to make sure that when it runs on whatever platform, all the files it needs are there. This is going to be one of the most technical videos, and so I'll say it from the beginning. If you need any help or support with what's happening, check out the ClickTeam forums or contact us, info@impactgamers.net, and we can see if we can help get your game to be packaged and published on the platform you want. Getting to this stage of wanting to publish your game is a big journey. We often say at Impact Gamers, when we think the game is 80% of the way done, it's probably only about 20% of the way done. The debugging, the adding extra effects, adding in a title screen, instructions, save mechanics, all that can be a very lengthy process. But watching this video now, even when you've only just started game development, will really help you have a good idea of how to set things up in a good way to make it easy to publish in the end. So let's look at platform. Platform is how it will be played. Is it going to be on a website? Is it going to be on mobile? Is it going to be on PC? We even often build custom arcade units to run our Fusion games. When deciding what platform, what we should point out is that you should have decided what platform you're making your game for way back at the beginning, even before you set up your player movement. That's because a platform will dictate so many things. How it will be played. Will it be controllers? Will it be keyboard? Will it be mouse? Will it be touch? Screen resolutions. Are you stuck to widescreen? Are you stuck to landscape, or could you do portrait? And also, the objects you add to your game might not be compatible with the platform you want. There are some checkboxes. When you add a new object, you can choose what platform you'll use so it filters what object it shows. And the same with effects. The effects might not work on the platform you want, such as addition and subtraction. The platform you're going to publish to is held as a property within the application itself. So in the workspace toolbar, if you click on your application, and under the cogs settings, you've got build type. Build is the term that ClickTeam Fusion uses for putting all of your files together in a format that will work on the right platform. The free edition you can only publish to HTML5. That's a type of web language that runs within a website, and by far the easiest way to share your game with many people across the internet. You automatically, with the full version, get access to build things as a Windows exe application, an executable application. This is a file that will run on any version of Windows, I believe from Windows 98 all the way up to Windows 11. You can also choose to create a screensaver. They were extremely popular in the 90s, when screens had problems of screen burn because they used the old-fashioned large CRT screens. But even in Windows 11, you can still have a screensaver, so that when your computer's inactive for a while, it can run your own ClickTeam game. And a sub-application. This is pretty much like an exe version, but can run from within another ClickTeam Fusion game. It's extremely useful, as we've spoken about before, if you're making a game that can choose to run other games, or if you're making levels that's independent of the other levels in the game, sub-applications can work very well. Then for mobile, you can have an Android application. which is an older version of something that would be built to run on an Android device, APK. Then you've got the Android App Bundle, the AAB, the more modern format for Android devices. You've got iOS application, and then you've got Xcode. We're not going to cover these in any detail, but we'll refer you back to the ClickTeam forums. HTML5 development and HTML5 final project will both give you files that will run in exactly the same way, although final project is encrypted in a way so that people can't take your code apart. Then you can download the DLC to have the Universal Windows Platform, UWP. We're also not going to cover this, but this is for uploading to the Microsoft Store. You can also, if your game is simple enough and will run on the free edition of ClickTeam, it has 3 frames or less, not having more than 100 backdrop objects or 30 other objects, and not having more than 150 event lines. But if your game is simple, leave it as an MFA and copy it to a memory stick along with the free edition so that anyone with a Windows PC that you lend it to can run your game from ClickTeam Fusion, with a couple of instructions about how to run application. Porting is the term of taking a game from one platform and putting it on another. This section is useful if you're releasing the same game on multiple platforms. Now, we are going to look at a way that you can check what platform your game is running on in order for it to run specific code for that platform. To demonstrate this, I have a string, and at start of frame, I'm going to change that alterable string to be the variable of runtime. That's stored under special, runtime, runtime name. So if I test it, because I'm running it on a Windows system, I get Windows. Note the capital W. If I built that game for web, for HTML5 and run it, I get HTML5 with a capital H. And if I produce it as an APK for Android, for running on mobile, it calls it Android with a capital A. This allows me, with a new condition, to compare 2 general values under special to see if special runtime name is equal to, be it Windows, and then I could check for HTML5 or for Android. I could then add in groups into my events specifically for Windows, HTML5 or Android events, actions or objects that are specific to that platform. Then at the start of the frame, I could, under group of events, I can deactivate those groups. See this section at this time code for more information about groups. Then, if it is Windows, I activate the Windows group. If it's HTML5, I activate that. And if it's Android, I activate that group. Meaning I don't have to branch my project. I can continue having one project for all platforms. Let's have a look at the application window properties. Resolutions become very important when playing on devices that are quite small, like mobile. But for Windows or web, it's much more flexible. Having a game that only partly fills the screen doesn't feel like a letdown. Here are some settings within the Windows properties that will make your game seem more like a commercial game and not like a little application. I've got my build type set to Windows EXE application. This allows me the most amount of Windows settings that I can change. So in the Windows properties, heading when maximized is unchecked, so you never get the title at the top of the screen. I also change it so it's maximized on boot up. For the menu, I turn off the menu bar completely. At the bottom, under options, I resize the display to fill the window size, so that the maximum amount of screen is taken up. But with most games, I will choose fit inside, black bars. This means your game isn't stretched out, but keeps its aspect ratio. And then anti-aliasing when resizing. I have this turned on for any artwork that isn't pixel art. If it is pixel art, you do want to keep the blocky edges, so you don't want to anti-alias it. You don't want to smooth it out when resizing. Now when you start your game, it will take up the complete screen. So there it is, running in full screen. But be careful, turning off the heading will mean that you don't get the minimize and close buttons in the top corner. To close it, I can either choose stop on the debugger window, or I can press Alt and F4 to close a current application in Windows. But we do need to go into the event editor and add in a quit option. it's normally best to add this into the global event editor in the full version. New condition, upon pressing a key, escape, end application. Now if we run our game, we can just press escape at any point and it will close. To help the player out, you might want to include a button on screen, a quit button. And then you can have the mouse, user clicks on an object, the quit button, then it ends the application. Or maybe moves that image to a next frame of are you sure? I just want to be in control! Choosing which controller the player will be using will affect your game development. And you have lots of choices if you're choosing the Windows system. On Windows, you've got options of keyboard, mouse. You have options of joypad, as most PC users will use a joypad as well. You even have options for touch, be it through a touchscreen or for simple touchscreen, you can use mouse inputs. But with joypad controllers, there's a whole range of different controllers which have different inputs. You may have just a basic controller, or you may be using an Xbox or PlayStation controller, which features analog controls. Be aware when building a game for web, you can't guarantee what system a person will be using. If they're using mobile, they might not have access to joystick or keyboard. If they're using a PC, they might not have access to touchscreen for multiple touch. So make sure your game will run with whatever standard hardware that platform has. So let's look at the two options. Firstly, using a joypad, and secondly, touch controls. ClickTeam has inbuilt joypad compatibility. In the application properties, under runtime options, under default controls, you can set up to 4 different joysticks for the 4 different players. And as we've said before, if the joypad isn't connected, it will default to the keyboard controls. By default, ClickTeam Fusion can check 8 directions of the joypad direction and 4 button inputs. If your controller has more than one directional pad or directional stick, only one will work. On Xbox or PlayStation controller, that'll be the top left thumbstick, and it will behave in a digital way, up, down, left, right, or the diagonals. Buttons 1, 2, 3, 4 are your A, B, X, Y, or your cross, circle, square, and triangle, and all the other buttons, the menu buttons, the top bumper buttons, the digital directions, the right thumbstick, they won't be red, but they can be if you add a new object in. The best object to use is currently Joystick 2. So we insert a new object, and if you don't have it installed, go to Manager, install the Joystick Object 2. Be aware, this only runs in Windows. This Joystick 2 object expands all the inputs you can use to every input on the joypad, and also expands the number of joypads you can use from 4 to 16. Any buttons above number 4 and any joystick above number 4 will not work by default on the default movements. You will have to create a custom movement by using a movement static and changing its X and Y position, a bouncing ball movement and changing its direction and speed depending on the joypad inputs, or a physics object and applying impulses, like this example. To ensure compatibility between joypads, and also to allow customization by the user, I would recommend changing each button input into an adjustment of an alterable value. So we could put the code in, new condition, click joystick 2, buttons, repeat while button is pressed. We choose the joystick number, so the first one, number 1, the button number, and I'll come back to this in a moment. So let's say button 1, the A button on an Xbox pad. Then, in an active object that we've added, we could have an alterable value of button A pressed. We could then add to that button A pressed 1. So as the button is held down, that number increases. Then when we're not pressing the button, so we'll do the same condition but negate it. So when we're not pressing that button, on the active object, under the alterable value of button A, we'll set it to 0. This allows us to have a condition that if the alterable value for button A is greater than 0, we can create an action, so maybe an event where our player jumps or fires, and then we can insert a limit, special limit condition only one action while event loops. So as soon as we press the button, the action will happen, it jumps or it shoots, until we let go and press it again. But as this button A will increase in value, the longer we hold the button down, we can also allow it for charged attacks. By tapping a button once, it does something little, and by holding it down, it does something bigger. The way we would do that is that we'd have a new condition that we can check the optimal value of button A, and if it's greater than 0 but less than 10, and insert that joystick 1 button 1 is released, it'll be a small jump, and we make sure that happens before the button A value is reset. Otherwise the value will be 0. And then we can copy and paste that whole event line and change it that if it's greater than 10, then we can jump with a bigger force. Using these alterable values would allow you to have different inputs trigger the same thing. So let's say we also want to have a keyboard press of a key, spacebar, to trigger the jump as well. So we can add in the code, a new condition, the keyboard, repeat while key is pressed, spacebar, and we can have that add to alterable value button A is pressed. I need to move that code up to the top so it triggers first. And if I test that out, I hold spacebar, and you'll see that the player continually jumps. Because I need to add in the restrictions, I'm going to copy that condition and negate it into the other two conditions. And you can see I can press spacebar, or I can press joystick, and I can jump. This allows you control of remapping buttons, having multiple buttons do the same thing, but it may just be too complicated for what you're doing. If you're happy with only using 4 buttons on a joypad and no analog controls, just use the default new condition, player 1, read joystick state. But if you want to go advanced, there is a whole world of values you can access in the joystick 2 object, and even add some rumble. To make it easier to understand what a pad does when it's connected with the joystick 2 object, we've created a little Click Team Fusion application that you can download and run. You can test your joypad and see what values different inputs give off, and the button numberings. In the next section, we'll look at how you can even add touch controls, so it doesn't matter if the player is using touch controls or mouse, keyboard or joystick, the game will still play in the same way. Now let's look at touch controls.
Oh, it's so touchy-feely.
A touch input from a mobile app from the screen, or on a PC from a touchscreen monitor, acts just like the left click on a mouse button. But with that limitation, only one click in one place can be registered at a time. You can't click on 2 different things at the same time, unlike a touchscreen, where you could have 5 or 10 different touches happening at the same time. So if you want your game to work on a touchscreen, and you're happy for it to be just one click or tap at a time, use the inbuilt mouse conditions. So new condition, the mouse, repeat while mouse key is pressed, and it's only the left click that will work with a mobile touchscreen. Windows does offer right clicking through some different gestures, but to keep it simple, we'll just talk about left clicks. And what we're going to do is we're going to position an active object to the X position of the mouse and the Y position of the mouse. As I click and move the mouse, that active object follows me. And on this touchscreen, wherever I touch, the mouse pointer jumps to that location, it's treated as a click, and will work in the same way. To make things easy, in Click Team Fusion, if your build type is for Android, iOS, or HTML5, you have the option of each frame under its properties, under the HTML5, the Android or the iOS options for joystick device. By saying that you've got a touch joystick and selecting the options you want, when the game runs on a touch screen, this overlay will appear and act in exactly the same way as a joystick with up to 2 buttons. So all of your code under player, joystick, read joystick state, or repeat while joystick is pressed will work via this virtual touch joystick. One thing to be aware is that this touch joystick will only appear in the final built version of the game, and will only appear if the device supports touchscreen. So in HTML5 web programs, only if you have a touchscreen on your PC or you're viewing the web page on a mobile, will this virtual touch joystick appear, which can make quick testing very difficult because you need to build and run your application each time rather than just running your application. There's very few ways you can customize it though, so we have built our own version, which as you imagine is a bit more complex. To get out all the extra information of a touchscreen, we can use the multiple touch object. This has very few settings, just some to allow gestures, but for our example, we don't need it. The way this multiple touch object works is that with every touch that happens on the screen is given a unique identification number. In our case, 0 to 9. 10 different touches can be followed by this touch screen. We've created 10 active objects called touch 0 to touch 9, and we've given them an alterable value called touch num for the touch number. This way we can demonstrate what's happening. The code is a new condition. Under multiple touch, a new touch has occurred. We check to see if one of our touch icons has a touch number of that last new touch. That's the unique ID, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If our active object matches the touch number 0 to 9, then we set a flag to be on. Then we've got another line of code that if that touch number is released, so a new condition, the multiple touch, a touch has ended, matches our icon, then we set the flag to off. While the flag's on, we make it visible and we set the position of its X coordinate to get the information from the multiple touch object, touch get touch X. And then we need to enter the number of the touch. It's just the alterable value of the touch number. And then we'll do that again for the Y position. And while the flag's off, we set it to fade out. When we run this application, I can click with the mouse and move it around, and you can see touch 0 moves around in that way. I can have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 on one hand, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the other. And it will track all those 10 individual points. And let's show you about the numbering system. I'll touch and get touch 0. I'll touch 2 more times and get touch 1 and 2 with 3 fingers on the screen. If I release touch 0 and touch again, touch 0 reappears. If I release touch 1 and touch again, touch 1 reappears. If I release touch 2 and touch again, it reappears because they're the next available number. If I touch 3 fingers on, 0, 1, 2, I take off 0 and 1. When I put back the finger that was number 1, it's now number 0 because that's the next available number. So it's vitally important if you're using multiple touch to trigger buttons or to control a joystick, you know which touch triggered it to make sure when touch is released, that button stops working. So we've built you a little template that you can download from this web address. We've created our own virtual joystick and a button. We've made it that if you touch the joystick, the latest touch on that joystick will set its position. That will give you values of angle and of the distance it's moved in 2 different alterable values called P angle and P force. But what we've made happen is that if the touch starts on that virtual joystick and moves off, the joystick still responds to where that touch is positioned. If you slip your finger off that virtual joystick, it doesn't recenter until you release the touch. The same with the button. When you touch the button, it will change an alterable value to remember which touch is touching it, numbers 0 to 9, and it will turn a flag on to hold. And when that touch is released, at that point, the flag will turn off and the button will show it's released. Because the screen is smooth, this is really important because the player can easily slide their fingers off a button without meaning to. And this system works brilliantly if you're releasing on different platforms because it takes the values from the virtual joypad. And so you can code in if you want that W, A, S and D, as they're held, that can reposition this active object of the virtual thumbstick. And because the angle and force are calculated from its position compared to the black circle beneath it, the same information, the same values will be passed. This means you can have joystick control, touch control, and keyboard control all in the same game, and you're not having to add any extra code. But like I said, it does get technical. Just stick to that simple virtual joystick if you only need basic directions and 2 buttons on screen. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of what you can do with controllers and the easiest way to handle it. Now let's get on to actually building the applications. Publishing, or as Fusion puts it, to build your application, to get it ready for the platform it's going to be used on. If you have the free or standard edition of ClickTeam Fusion, in your built game, you need to display a Made with Fusion logo, available at this website. It's only if you've paid for the developer version that you have a license, meaning you don't need to show that image. Now, if you're using the free version, you are limited in what you can publish to. You can only publish to web in a HTML5 web page. But I would highly recommend, as we said before, if your game is simple, just share your MFA file and friends can play your MFA file. Building a game for Windows in Fusion is made very simple, and in the full version, it's your only option without downloading extra DLC. In your application properties, build type Windows EXE, and in the Windows settings, you don't really need to change anything. But in information, you have the option to change the name, which will be the application's name, and also the icons. Now, there's several different icons for different sizes and different color systems. You probably only need to set the first couple of icons for it to have an effect on Windows. But if we go to File, Build an Application, and we're just going to save it as its default name, we'll see that in our folder we've got the MFA and the EXE. The EXE is the built application. When we run it, it works. And when sharing it with our friends, it's best to build your application to a memory stick to share it. If you just copy the files over, you might miss the important modules folder. These DLLs are needed to run the application, and you can see there's also a data file there as well. We'll look at a way that you can package all of these files up into one bundle in the packing section at this timecode. Web. In your application properties, under build type, change it to HTML5. The HTML5 settings don't need to be changed, but grouping images in mosaic files will load it faster, but if you separate them, will allow easy editing outside of Fusion if needed. Under the About, there's nothing we need to change here. But on the window size, we need to pay attention to these last checkboxes. We'll go to File, Build, Application, and we get project name and project path. If the path doesn't exist, we can't press OK. Browse and choose a folder that exists and press OK. Now you may get an error saying that Java, the runtime environment or the development kit is not installed. To tell ClickTeam where it's installed, we can right-click on our application and go to Preferences. Then we go to General and change the exporter to HTML5. This is where the path name for Java goes. You can download Java if you haven't got it installed, just from java.com. And I'd recommend downloading the 64-bit, or you could download the 32-bit, but I would highly recommend installing the 64-bit version if you're running Windows 10 or 11. So let's choose where to install it. Now this path is what ClickTeam will need later. So we've installed it, and if we go to the C drive program files, and we'll find Java, and we can select the folder where we installed it to. Press OK. And now it's linked correctly. Another possible problem you may run into is with virus scanners. Virus scanner might not recognize the file and block it from being built. Feel free to pause your virus scanner for a couple of minutes, which most virus scanners allow, just while you build your brand new file. So let's go back in. Java's installed, the virus scanner is disabled, and we built our file. This will create a folder. It's an HTML file and then Java files in folders above, with your resources of your sound or your pictures. These files need to be put on an online server to be played online. So using an FTP program, we will upload that folder to a server we have access to. And if we go to the web address, it runs. But notice it's running in a small window. If we want it to be full screen, we need to click on our application, go to its Windows properties and click those checkboxes to resize, fit inside, and if you want to anti-alias also. If we re-upload it and make sure we copy over the old version, when we go back to the web page and refresh, it's loading the new version. Now, occasionally it might not show you the new version because the old version is cached. To resolve that, I would recommend always testing your games in incognito or in private mode so that you get a brand new download of your web page rather than viewing an old version. Android releasing for mobile. So if we click on our application and go to the settings, the build type, and choose Android application or Android app bundle, which is the AAB or the APK. We'll stick with the older version just for this, the APK, but both should work the same. Make these unique for your app. So set your package name to be something unique. 3 words separated by that period, that full stop. The build app you will come back to. The minimum Android and the target Android are vital for publishing on the store. Going down, there's several important settings I need to point out. The version code must be incremented each time you upload a version. It allows the mobile phone to know which is the latest version. And the launcher icon is how your game's icon is shown. Another vitally important thing is the screen orientation. The screen orientation needs to be set to landscape if your game is running in landscape. Otherwise, it will run squished in portrait. The Windows settings should have these 3 ticked at the end as well to resize to fill the whole screen. And this build appy is how the game actually gets changed into an Android game. I'm going to set it to a low number, 20 here. Clicking newest installed SDK appy isn't changing it, and it should. 20 is an outdated appy, and I should have a much more recent one installed. We'll go to File, Build Application, and I'll just set it as a default name. It's telling me I haven't got the Android SDK installed. That's called Android Studio. It's become much easier to use than it was previously. Just download it from the Android site, install it, and it will automatically suggest that you install the latest appy and you have to accept the license agreements. Once it's installed, we can tell ClickTeam where it's installed, and we can re-access this in the preferences of our application, and it will build the APK. This can take a long time depending on your game and your processor speed, and there's nothing there. Sometimes you may get an error log, sometimes you may get nothing. And it's because this build appy, the SDK, isn't properly linked. If we go into our application preferences under general and change it to Android, we can see that the path name of the SDK directory is set to this. Now, if we go into Android Studio and go into the SDK manager, you'll see that the path name for the SDK is set to a different folder. I've had issues before where ClickTeam hasn't had permissions to access the folder. So I sometimes edit the folder to be on a different directory so that ClickTeam has access. And you can just click edit and set your own directory. Well, let's copy and paste the correct SDK folder. Now, if we go to check the properties, go to Android, the build appy set as 20 at the moment. But if I click newest, 36, which is the one we installed. So it is checking the right folder. Now we pass that check. Let's build application. Let's save it the same name. And once it's built, we'll go into Android Studio and we'll load up the virtual device manager to run a virtual phone on our computer to install it. Once that virtual phone's added, I just drag and drop the APK file or the ABB and it installs. Click to run it. And I'll need to rotate the phone round because I published it in landscape orientation, and there it is running as I'd expect it to. So getting the APK file or the ABB on mobile without uploading it to a storefront, it's easiest to use a cloud system like Google Drive or OneDrive. Here I am in Google Drive, and I just click on the file and it asks if I want to install it. I need to allow Drive to install apps because it's an unknown source, and then I can install it. Once installed, just like on the virtual device, I can run it. packaging. Packaging is a way of keeping your files together so the game will run. And this comes back to the data elements of binary files and external files covered in this previous video. I'm going to set up my game with a couple of external files. So I've added an active picture and I'm going to add a string to it just to explain that this image is from the base folder, meaning it's saved where the game's saved. Now ClickTeam has got the full file name of it, so running the game on my system is absolutely fine, even when it's published. But if it's on someone else's system, it will load with an empty image. They don't have that drive and that folder and that file. So I'm going to make the file relative. I've removed all of the folder information and just got the file name. So because the application is saved in the same folder, when I publish it, it's going to give me a warning that I've got some relative file names. That's okay. Now I'm going to do this incorrectly. I'm going to copy the exe file that I've just made onto a USB stick and run it. Now the virus scanner will come up, and that's a very common thing. The games that we're making in Fusion are unique. And it'll come back saying it's clean and try and load the game. You may also get this in the build process. Don't worry. But now it's saying that we're missing a DLL file. So let's rebuild it onto that memory stick to make sure we've got the modules folder and the data file. But this image is still not there. That file hasn't been copied across when we built it. If we drag the file across and copy it ourselves manually, now if we run the application from the memory stick, it's fine, it's happy. Because it was in the base folder and the game was in the base folder, it ran. So how do we package things to stop problems like this? Packaging for Windows, zip. There's 3 ways we can package things for Windows, but zip file is probably the quickest and simplest. When we build our game, we have one file that's in the base folder and another file that's in a subfolder called number 1. So I'm going to make them relative, which will lose the preview of the picture. Now, if I build my application, it works brilliantly. The base picture's in the base folder, folder 1's in folder 1, and those folders exist, and the file exists. If I select them all, I can right-click and choose to compress to a zip file. That makes a brand new file which contains all of the files and folders. So if I extract that to a different system and then run my application from the new system, it works fine. Everything was copied over in the zip file. Everything was placed in the same relative location. Using the Windows installer, ClickTeam has built into it an install program. Now we get the warning again of the relative files. That's okay because those are the files we need to add. And we can add files in the Files tab. So I'm going to add the base image, add the image from folder 1, and notice it adds the folder structure in when I do that. Then I need to make sure I add all the modules. So I'm going to go in the modules folder, Control A to select them all. And I also need to add the data file in as well. I can change some text from the installation program, click Build Install Program, choose a file name, press OK. Once again, when trying to install, the virus scanner will kick in to check. That's no problem. But it will kick in a second time once the install program starts. Again, that's no problem. I'm going to install this on my system at this folder location. And there it is. You have the modules folder and you have the one folder all installed from one install package. Windows binary extract. Now this is an old traditional way, and I will cover later. The modern versions of ClickTeam don't seem to need this extraction to work. So check this timecode to see the new format. But just in case you need to know how binary data can be handled in Windows. So in the data elements section, in my binary data, I'm going to add the image that I currently have, which is the image binary.jpg. You'll notice that makes the external files, where it was previously held, empty, and it will put the JPEG inside my MFA file when I save it. But in order to access it, I need to extract it. So at the start of frame, under special, I'm going to go to binary, extract binary file. Now I need to get the name exactly right. So I'm actually going to go to my data elements and I'm going to click on it twice, select it and copy it. Then when I go to my binary files, extract data file, I need to paste it back with inverted commas. Now that file's extracted, still at the start of frame, I'm going to get my active picture to have a new picture and I'm going to use an expression. Now the expression is under special, under file names, binary file, temporary file name, because the binary file will be extracted to a temporary place. I don't know where. I'm going to paste in the exact name again. Then at the end of the application, to delete those temporary files, binary files, release binary file, and inverted commas are going to paste that same name. Now that can become a right pain and is probably not needed. So check this video at this time code for an alternative use. So we extract it, we use it, and then at the end of the application, we release it. So if we build our application, and I'll just use that name, press OK. And if I run it, there it is. Because they were held within the MFA and then built within the EXE, I can run my application and it works. If you have multiple binary files, it can get to be a right pain. So I would just create a list of all your binary files. At the start of frame, you run a quick loop to work through that list, to extract them, and then at the end to release them. But again, this might not be necessary. So check this video at this time code to use the new way of binary files. Okay, for web, we're going to have two images. We're going to have an image in the base folder and then an image in folder number 1. Pay attention to this backslash. I'm going to make it a relative image to the folder. So we've got the image and an image in folder 1. I'm going to change the build type to HTML5. I will build the file. I will upload the whole folder, I'll access it, and there's nothing there. If I go into the folder online, there is nothing there. I need to copy those images over. So the HTML5 application has access to them. I copy them over, I try it. The base folder worked fine, but this folder 1 didn't. And that's this backslash. The backslash in web is a /. So if I build it again as a / and load up the website, I run it, refresh, it still didn't work. That's because a cached version was there. Loading it in incognito, I can see that it worked perfectly. Close down incognito windows and load it up as a brand new in private on incognito to see the latest version rather than a previous cache. Okay. Android use of binary and also the modern Windows version of binary now. If we have images, and I'm just going to add in the full link, some external images here from my computer. Now you notice that they've got all of the drive and the folder names and everything there. I don't need to change it. I can just go into binary files and add the files that I'm using. The binary data has all of my files I need and they're not external anymore. They're built into ClickTeam. I can choose Android application. And I will build my application. Once it's built, I'll go to a virtual device, I'll install it and test it. And it works perfectly. ClickTeam will take that reference of the drive letter and the folder name and get those files from your binary data stored in your ClickTeam application. And this can work for Windows as well. It wasn't the way. It used to be that you had to extract files, but I've found now that in new versions of ClickTeam, you can just add your binary data and it will work seamlessly. I'm aware that ClickTeam itself has a professional service. If you have a game that you think is going to make it big, I would recommend going via them. They're able to release games for PlayStation, Switch, Xbox, Steam, and you won't have access to that kind of publishing power without them or someone who does the same service. Well, that's it. You're now thinking in Fusion. This video manual has taken you all the way from learning what the editors do to being able to produce your own game and publish it in whatever way you're able to. As I've always said, thinking in Fusion is a manual, not a tutorial. Well, the final sections of Thinking in Fusion will be tutorials. We're going to be looking at making a maze game, a platform game, and a physics-based game using all the knowledge that we've learnt thinking in Fusion, and at the same time teach you how to teach others to make games in Fusion. So, let the game making begin. See you then.